By late 1944, Japan's war strategy was failing. The Great Marianas Turkey shoot had wiped out most of the empire's remaining veteran pilots, and they could no longer adequately train replacements. A drastic solution to this crisis was suggested: organize special attack units to crash dive aircraft into enemy warships. In the most controversial tactic of the Pacific War, these pilots became known as kamikaze. How did Japan reach a point where human lives became guided missiles? And what did these missions really achieve? This is the story of Japan's kamikaze campaign. By the end of 1944, the leaders of Japan had to confront the harsh reality that their strategic position was rapidly collapsing. Few were willing to consider unconditional surrender, even though the United States, with its much larger industrial capacity, was rapidly undoing Japan's early war gains. It was in this context that the idea of using individual self-sacrifice as a weapon, essentially turning pilots into human bombs, became plausible, then policy, and finally doctrine. The Battle of the Philippine Sea in June 1944, sometimes referred to as the Great Marianas Turkey shoot, was the pivotal moment. Hundreds of Japanese aircraft and much of the Navy's remaining veteran aircrew were destroyed by American carrier pilots in this one campaign. Japan was still able to produce aircraft, but under the stress of war, it was impossible to train new pilots to pre-war standards. As a result, Japan's conventional air power was reduced to a hollow shell. In response to this, a few Japanese officers started thinking about drastic measures. Suicide attacks had occurred earlier in the war when crippled planes attempted to crash into targets rather than ditch at sea, but these had been isolated, spur-of-the-moment decisions. Desperation gave rise to the notion of formalizing such attacks and creating a whole operational doctrine around them. The first organized kamikaze missions began in the Philippines after the U.S. landings on Leyte in October 1944. The Imperial Japanese Navy, desperate for any means of impeding the American advance, created the Special Attack Force. Vice Admiral Takejiro Onishi, who had just been appointed to lead the First Air Fleet in the Philippines, approved the establishment of this new unit for combat operations. The majority of kamikaze pilots flew outdated fighters or dive bombers that had been modified for suicide missions, frequently with bombs weighing between 250 and 500 kilograms slung beneath the fuselage. Armament other than the bomb was usually removed, and occasionally they were stripped of radios and other equipment in order to reduce weight and increase speed. A large number of kamikaze pilots were drafted into flight training just out of high school or college. By late 1944, Japan couldn't afford months of advanced training or realistic combat exercises, so training was usually brief and focused on basic flying skills. Before their mission, they often spent as little as 40 hours in the cockpit. Accidents were common. Prior to their missions, the pilots took part in elaborate send-off ceremonies and were often given white headbands with courageous slogans and the rising sun symbol on them. As the planes took off, schoolgirls and local civilians gathered to wave cherry blossom branches or flags in rituals designed to frame the mission as both sacred and communal. Why individual kamikaze pilots flew cannot be reduced to a single reason. A wide range of motivations are described by survivors, including loyalty to comrades, fear of social shame, patriotic duty, fatalism, and occasionally sincere conviction that the mission was essential. Some pilots wrote passionately about giving their lives for the emperor or defending their families from invaders, while others expressed sorrow, regret, or worry more about the pain their deaths would cause loved ones. Several survivors stated that many pilots didn't want to die, but saw no other alternative given the pressures of wartime Japan. Refusing a kamikaze mission would be perceived not only as personal cowardice, but also as a betrayal of one's family and country. During the Battle of Leyte Gulf on October 25, 1944, a group of kamikaze aircraft from the Shikishima Squadron attacked U.S. escort carriers off Samar. One crashed into the escort carrier USS St. Lo detonating her bomb load and sinking the ship with heavy casualties, while other attacks damaged several other carriers and destroyers. The Japanese High Command, desperate for signs of hope, was overjoyed with the success of these first attacks, which led to the expansion of the Special Attack Force. What began as a limited experiment quickly evolved into a permanent system. Both the Army and the Navy established kamikaze units, assigning them airfields in Taiwan, the Philippines, and eventually Japan. The Americans were initially shocked by the savagery of the new tactic. Although incoming raids could frequently be detected by radar and combat air patrols, kamikaze pilots usually dove straight through fighter defense and flak at high speed and low altitude, leaving very little time for reaction. A fuel-laden aircraft slamming into a ship at several hundred kilometers per hour could penetrate decks and start catastrophic fires, causing severe damage. Between October 1944 and January 1945, kamikazes sank or assisted in the sinking of numerous combat ships and transport vessels, causing significant damage to many more, including fleet carriers. However, these successes came at a staggering cost, with thousands of Japanese aircraft and pilots lost. They unleashed havoc on U.S. forces in the area, but they did not prevent the Americans from capturing the Philippines and cutting Japan off from its southern resource areas. The Battle of Okinawa, Japan's final major defensive battle before the planned invasion of its home islands, marked the peak of the kamikaze campaign. Beginning in late March 1945, waves of kamikaze aircraft from bases in Japan and Formosa attacked Allied ships around Okinawa. Over 1,500 kamikaze sorties were launched in a series of massive, well-planned strikes over the course of the next 3 months, making Okinawa the deadliest location U.S. naval forces encountered during the war. Over the course of the Okinawa campaign, kamikazes sank 36 ships and damaged 368 more, resulting in approximately 10,000 casualties, of which about half were killed. With little assistance from larger ships, destroyers and smaller ships stationed on radar picket duties in outlying locations meant to provide early warning of impending raids were particularly vulnerable to large-scale assaults. Yet even this level of savagery could not alter the overall strategic picture in Japan's favor. The U.S. Navy, now fully aware of the kamikaze strategy, adapted by implementing a layered defense in depth. Radar picket ships positioned on the fleet's perimeter directed the combat air patrols to intercept raids much farther out than had previously been possible. Improved layered anti-aircraft fire and enhanced damage control techniques kept many badly damaged ships afloat. These new tactics, when combined with vast American industrial capacity, meant that even serious losses could be absorbed. Despite the losses, the Allied fleet off Okinawa continued operations, and the Marines and Army soldiers on the island received supplies and fire support, resulting in an Allied victory. By mid-1945, Japan's air and fuel resources had been depleted to the point where major kamikaze operations were difficult to sustain. Although the kamikaze campaign did not change the outcome of the war, it did cause significant tactical damage and put Allied forces under tremendous stress, particularly off Okinawa. Ultimately, by squandering thousands of young lives in a series of one-way missions, they only increased Japan's losses while providing no long-term advantage. Press that like button and don't forget to ring the bell icon so you don't miss the next video. Check out my channel page for more great videos like this one.